Hey guys, the question of this video is, which kind of strategy game is for you? Turn-based or real-time? Now the main reason to ask this question is because both of them bring a different feeling while playing. One tends to be slow and methodic while the other can lead into chaotic situations. And truth be told, you might like one and despise the another. So here I wanna share 8 games with no particular order, going one and one. Let's begin with a personal favorite. It began in 1998, fighting against Age of Empires and Command & Conquer, all kings back in the day. It presented a kind of a story that was rarely seen in those games, and futuristic ideas that definitely marked many. I am talking about StarCraft. And while I will recommend the first one, as it was amazing, let's be honest, the second game improved on many ways. Now, I don't think this game needs that much presentation, but this is one of the absolute must if you're into real-time strategy, as each race is played in unique ways. So this is one of those entries where you can sink countless hours while enjoying pure real strategy madness. If you have the time and means to play both entries, I definitely recommend them. I know it has been a while, but both of them are still amazing to play, so you can keep this journey into solo player or dive further with friends. Now I gotta be honest, I just recommend its online mode to those who really want to dive deep. Whatever the case, I prefer to talk about this kind of setting than the perhaps overused fantasy one. For the next entry, back in 1994 one of the most important strategic games was released, XCOM UFO Defense. It was acclaimed as every move mattered, and also because losses meant something, and it took quite a time to get an updated version. In 2012, XCOM Enemy Unknown was released, and it did most of the things in an extraordinary way. It is considered as one of the hardest strategy games because if this is your first time playing one of these entries, you will commit many mistakes. And I don't say it like that as a form to intimidate. In all honesty, if you are into strategic games, XCOM Enemy Unknown is another must, because every choice matters. If you decide to create characters in one way or another, that has its consequences, but that is half of the fight. Because in the other half, it is all about knowing how to command your units, and of course bring them back alive. But let's be honest, there are two things that have to be pointed. Its soundtrack is an okay, and sometimes it can feel repetitive as you will have 3 main objectives, which are rout the enemy, secure alien technology, or capture aliens to interrogate them. Despite that, as you will visit different areas, the strategic elements will be there for you to dive into another extraordinary journey. Let's follow with a franchise that was born in 1987. Now, if you wonder why StarCraft and Warhammer are quite similar, it is because back in the day Blizzard got to develop some things here, but for some reason stuff got cancelled midway, and well, the rest is the story. It is true that there are many Warhammer out there. Some reminiscent to Doom, others to the already mentioned StarCraft. But here I want to talk about Dawn of War 2. This is an RTS where we are going to find all characters from the franchise, and this is perhaps where it would be a good idea to dive a bit into its story and background. But if you haven't played anything from this franchise, that is going to take its time. So just pick a group of books, games, or wherever you want to begin. There is no need to go in a specific order, at least in my opinion. Just keep in mind that Warhammer was born as a satire. It is worth taking its roots and understand its reminiscence with our lives. What's entertaining in this entry is that we are going to manage a small group of marines, each with unique ways to attack and advance in this journey. Here we are not going to collect resources or stuff like that. In nature the game is simple, with some main objectives and side stuff to do, where its story is non-linear, as you get to choose if you wanna do a quest first or later, as well as subquests that disappear after a while. If there is something to point out is that its level of customization and strategy are really good, because you cannot unlock everything. There's a cap that you have to keep in mind and compensate with the other units. As for the maps, if you think it is just sending units forward, you will have it rough. Sometimes it's better to take your time to properly secure areas while slowly flanking other enemies. In the next entry, I want to talk about Fire Emblem. Now here there's a heated debate between old school players with entries like Thracia, Radiant Dawn and stuff like that, and the 2013 to this day with the stuff like Awakening, Fates, Engage, etc, etc. Both generations did great and terrible things, almost kicking the bucket, and crappy gacha mechanics as well as adding clowns. Whatever the case, I prefer to play Three Houses above the previous entries, because this game knew how to handle great surprises in the story, depending which route you decided to take. It has an amazing cast of characters and extraordinary mechanics for the main idea of this video, so in normal or even hard difficulties, you are able to build your characters in pretty much whatever way you want. Gambits have special effects that work quite well for different kind of units, and if all of these points are already mastered and you want to have that glorious background, Madden in difficulty is the ultimate challenge, where it is really easy to get into a soft lock and start cursing at the screen from the impending demise. As far as bosses goes, this is the entry that I have enjoyed the most, as the beast and another enemies actually felt like bosses. Unfortunately, in these kind of chess settings, sometimes I believe it is hard to properly give that kind of feeling, but Three Houses was able to accomplish that in a good way. Let's follow with Partisans 9041. The background of this story is about Operacja Barbarossa in World War II, where we are going to take the Red Army side, disrupting German operations behind their lines. This is a slow entry, but one I definitely recommend, because its story is really good. I'll leave it at that. And while it is true that at first you'd have but few choices, down the line you will have a small squad supporting not just in operations, but also back in a small camp, so it has a good level of management, as you see these units grow from the ground. Gameplay wise, it is a bit random at times, and I prefer to be clear with that, because it can be a bit messy while executing some actions, delivering completely different outcomes, so it can be frustrating. But getting past that, this is one of those entries where you have to be tactical in every step of the way. Sure, you can jump and shoot, but most of the times that will lead to terrible outcomes, so it is best to take on stealthy routes, slowly getting enemies down. And what is cool is that the level design is on point for that kind of approaches. In the next entry, I want to talk about Divinity Original Sin 2. This entry is well known if you are into strategic RPGs. It has an amazing narrative, with consequences depending from your choices, interesting NPCs, and much more. You can dive with pre-created characters or your own. This is one of those entries where creativity takes a big role, because each map is connected in unique ways, giving you the chance to use peculiar magics to interact with your surroundings. Needless to say that if you do not take advantage, the enemy will do it. So to put it simple, this is a chess that takes things into another level. Sure, sometimes pulling some strategies take a while, but it is stupidly rewarding once you learn to pull down tactics as you envision them. In this entry, choosing a fighter goes beyond the classic idea of simply hitting the enemy, because there are also multiple ways to proceed, depending how you wanna build that fighter. In short, this is a really packed game, with an amazing level of customization. Then let's jump into a not so old release, with Iron Harvest. Here we are going to get into a dystopian world that hasn't seen the First World War, so the devs of the game made an interpretation of some armies. If you like a story, you will quickly catch references, but it doesn't stop there, because you will also hear about other famous characters like Nikola Tesla or some conspiracy theories. This is an entry where you will feel the rush while commanding your troops, as the level of conflict can extend to different fronts. In solo player you will find a good number of missions, where they don't feel the same as you advance, and it can go from something like managing resources, establishing bases while growing an army, or infiltrate into enemy bases. These are few examples of what you're going to do, but it is a rewarding experience, because as the other games in this list, its level of strategy leads into great playing sessions. Perhaps where it can feel a bit simple is the number of things you will have to pay attention while managing resources or looking at numbers. On the other side, if you're looking for an entry with some straightforward approaches, Iron Harvest will be for you. With this, don't get me wrong, while it is simple on some fronts, on others it will blow your mind, because this entry looks for a dynamic experience, and I gotta say, it accomplishes quite well. And let's finish with Tactics Ogre Reborn. Originally released in 1995 for the SNES and ported several times. I believe this is another title that doesn't need that much introduction. It has a good story, and unlike the previous Tactics Ogres, This one has a bit more of freedom since the beginning, which is appreciated. What can be a turn-off is that there is a cap, so you will face multiple moments that can be a bit frustrating, but just if you're brute forcing your way. Otherwise, there are multiple assets along the journey to take advantage, so there is no real need to have the same level or several levels above. As the name implies, a tactic is going to be needed. That is where you can take advantage of the AI, because it can be a bit too aggressive, trying to go after your units, so try to use that on your advantage. But do not let them too much room to breathe, because sometimes that is a big mistake here. Aside from that, this is another game with amazing replay value, due to the number of things you can do in its gameplay, turning it into a rich experience. That of course if you're into tactical games. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.